are the chances that any of this can in fact be accomplished? I believe that the decade ahead is propitious for today's systems changers and movers of mountains. The new awareness of the nation's unsolved problems can become a lubricant for change. There is an increased recognition that many of the old arrangements aren't working. A lot of states and local communities seem eager to try new ways of delivering services, new ways of collaborating, even to give up pieces of turf and outmoded ways of doing business. As I've gotten around the country, I sense a new readiness to think more broadly, more conceptually, to get away from just thinking about isolated kinds of interventions to solve isolated problems. And this new understanding comes at an extraordinary time in history, with freedom sweeping Eastern Europe, with the Berlin Wall falling, the Cold War ending. We can seize on this. It's a precious moment. There's a new mood of possibility in the world. And we need to seize that and to invest in a new kind of national security by improving the conditions of America's children and families. In the last month, I heard William Colby, former director of the CIA, and Robert McNamara, former defense secretary, on separate occasions both saying that before the end of this decade, we're going to have as much as $150 to $200 billion a year of savings from defense that could be made available for domestic programs. The national deficit has made it hard to argue for new social spending because the deficit threatens economic growth and national competitiveness. But a failure to invest in the next generation has precisely the same effects. We've been discouraged in the 1980s from thinking boldly. We've learned to think small, to argue about chump change, to be content with marginal, incremental improvements. But some of our most urgent problems can't be solved that way. They require a bold vision and a critical mass of change. I don't have the answers for how it can all be put together, how to sort out the roles of social agencies, schools, health programs, business, private philanthropy, or the various levels of government. I do know we have the elements of successful programs to build on, that we can't do it at bargain basement prices, and that we can't do it overnight. I also know that we can be certain that if it's done well, it will make a difference in the life of this nation. And now that we have such wide agreement about the high stakes, now that we have so much of the knowledge we need, we have to combine both vision and perseverance to make it happen. We have to assure that the most excellent services that this nation can provide will reach the children and families who need them most. Then the children who are growing up today without hope have a real chance of becoming the thriving, participating adults of the America of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schorr. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to Ms. Lisbeth Schorr speaking on breaking the cycle of disadvantage. In just a moment, we'll turn to our traditional question period, but first, some announcements. We're at the City Club today and hoping that many of you will think of joining our club. You can do so by calling 621-0082 or by writing to us at 850 Euclid Avenue, Cleveland 44114. We have a pleasant task today, and that is to announce another $25,000 gift to the Forum Foundation's Endowment Fund. This will assure an annual forum on education in honor of Bernice Kerrigan Smith. This forum has been endowed by members of her family. Miss Smith began a teaching career in a rural one-room schoolhouse in Ohio and continued as a teacher with the Cleveland Public Schools. And today, too, even in her retirement, she's a strong supporter of education. She's here today with some friends from Baldwin Wallace College. Will Miss Smith stand, please, so we may show her our appreciation? Thank you, Ms. Smith. And her son is representing the family. Would Edward Smith receive our applause? Thank you for this fine way to honor such a fine lady and for being here with us today. As Stanley Edelstein reminds us, the campaign for endowed funds continues. It assures the stability of our 77-year-old club and promises us a secure future. Think about it if you're one of those folks who can so provide for our club. Next Friday at our regular forum time, we will have a double-header treat for you, both from the Cleveland Orchestra. Christopher von Duckniani, the musical director, and Thomas W. Morris, the executive director of the Cleveland Orchestra, will be speaking on the symphony orchestra in a changing world. Please be here for that rare speaking appearance of our Cleveland Orchestra staff and director. Also, this coming week on Tuesday, the 23rd of January, we're having a special program featuring Dr. Robert Whiting of Case Western Reserve University's faculty, speaking on the use of sexual content in advertising. How effective is it? So, sex on Tuesday and music on Friday. Make your reservation for these important forums today. Today, as always, we have students with us who are participating in our Living Seminars program, which we sponsor in cooperation with the Cleveland Public Schools and Cuyahoga Community College. With us now are students from Shaw, Brush, and East Tech. Would they and their teachers stand and receive our applause, please? The students will be meeting with Ms. Schorr for their own seminar right after our forum here. Now for questions for Ms. Schorr. We have two microphones, one at the front with Lillian Anderson, one at the rear with Bob Conrad. Raise your hand to be recognized. First question, please.
Mrs. Schorr, you mentioned Mr. Rivera having 60 students to take care of. Have you, in your studies, arrived at any kind of rule of thumb on the number of clients that one frontline worker can handle? And I wonder also whether, if we put some of our public funds into developing and maintaining volunteer Big Brother, Big Sister kind of programs, would we get better results from the number of dollars we have available?
First, on the question of the number of clients one frontline worker can handle, you're absolutely right that the 60 youngsters that this one young man worked with over a period of 6 years meant the fact that he was able to stay with the same group, of course, meant he really was able to develop a relationship, and the fact that there were only 60 of them made a big difference, too. Felix Rohatyn in New York City did some arithmetic on that and found how many more school counselors would be needed in the New York City schools if each counselor were to have only 60 youngsters. I believe that we need not only to do that multiplication, but the other thing that I think we learn from that experience is that even if the counselors had a fewer number, if they were restricted in doing what it is that they now do, both as a result of what they are required to do, what they are trained to do, and what they are permitted to do, and also what they see themselves, their own role, how they see themselves, would have to be changed as much as the numbers. There's another program that I visited and described in my book called Home Builders, which some of you may know. It's a family preservation program that works with families that are threatened with the removal of a child as a result of either neglect or abuse, usually. The Home Builders workers work with that family in crisis for up to 6 to 8 weeks, and they have no more than 5 families on their caseload at any one time. Now, what's very interesting is that they have done the arithmetic on whether that has been cost-effective. That extremely intensive kind of intervention has been cost-effective, and they found that they have been able to save 3 times as much as the cost of that quite expensive program, even though they, just in out-of-home placements prevented, even though they have that very small caseload. Now, obviously, the caseload of a school counselor and of a worker working with a family in crisis, it's not going to be the same number. And in each instance, it's probably going to have to be worked out how many people can one worker deal with. Now, on the question, but what we know is that it has to be few enough so that you can develop a real relationship between professional and client. Now, how much can volunteers help? How much of the load can they take off of professionals? I think the experience with most of the programs I've looked at is that when volunteers are built into the structure of the program and well supervised, get a lot of support, a lot of consultation, volunteers have been very effective. Volunteers have also been effective with less needy groups, where if the kid just needs one little boost and is not in a situation where everything is going wrong and where the family is surrounded by poverty and chaos, where the volunteers can be, it's easier for a volunteer to be helpful in a situation where the risks are not bombarding the child and the family. Where in a family that faces a multitude of problems, the volunteer can also be helpful, but then the volunteer needs training, supervision, consultation, and support. So do professionals working in these programs need training, supervision, and support.
Women's Speak Out for Peace and Justice is the local branch of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Last year, we initiated a drive to try to generate support for the UNICEF Convention on the Rights of the Child worldwide. We were very successful and got a lot of government officials and organizations and religious groups to adopt it and support it. Eventually, it was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations, but it now remains for governments, nations that is, to ratify and implement that convention so that there will be some benefit to children. I understand the United States is not in favor of this particular convention. Have you any information about this, and what do you think it will take to get our government to implement and ratify and implement this convention? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I really have to plead ignorance about where that stands and why our government has taken the position it has. I can tell you that my very first job before I got out of college was with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, but I have not kept track of that. I think that it shows that there are many levels that we can work on: the international level, the national level, the state level, and the local level. And we need to work on all of them.
Mrs. Schorr, we have tremendous pools of social workers in every community. Do you think that perhaps those departments should now be redistributed to do some of this effective organizational work in counseling, the neighborhood levels, and would that be more effective? And have you seen examples of that?
I'm a little inhibited in answering your question because I have before me my brother-in-law who is a professor of social work, and I haven't checked with him about how he would have me answer that question. I can also tell you that I think one of the big problems is that social workers, like teachers, whom we depend on to